Innova announces that Ken Climo is going to be leaving Team Innova. He's the legend, arguable GOAT. He got an offer that he could not pass up.
Something that doesn't feel quite right.
The disc golf world is in shambles.
Oh my God.
I cannot believe what just happened. According to Ultiworld, there is a $200,000+ contract with Ken Climo and Discraft. Let's break down everything we know and what led up to the most weird signing we have ever seen in the disc golf world.
McBeth talking about, I want to get Ken Climo more involved. He's been saying that in press conferences. And McBeth doesn't do anything randomly.
So often we hear you talk about how you want to chase down Kenny, how you want the most majors. What does it mean to get one step closer with one more world title?
I mean, it's awesome, but I just wish he was more present. You see a lot of those greatest of all time, and they're present. So I want Kenny to be more present.
And in case you are unfamiliar, Ken Climo, very much a legend, somebody that has won 12 world titles, 12. And of course, it was in an era where disc golf was totally different. The landscape was night and day, not what it looks like now. So with his 26-year-long history with the PDGA, he had been with Innova for basically 26 years. Starting in 1999, Jonathan Poole had the idea to start a disc golf team with sponsored athletes, and Ken was the first disc golfer with a paid sponsorship agreement with Team Innova, which definitely feels jarring in the current landscape of disc golf, where we have contracts going up and down, left and right. And before we heard anything about this, there was rumors that we're going to get Climo because that was actually a URL that was registered literally with the domain climodisc.com. Still no clue what that's about. Maybe we'll get some more information about that, or maybe that was just some kind of troll. And speaking of trolls, on Twitter, there's Ken Climo that has been posting some pretty not safe for work memes. And so Ken, before this, made his own Twitter so that he could establish his own branding and that he is not associated with this kind of weirdo, but does have some kind of funny memes sometimes. And even though I thought the account was taken down, nope, he is definitely still posting, especially with this announcement. But before we get into the contract details, you're probably wondering what led up to this. Well, as far as I can tell, Ken Climo does not really play disc golf all that often besides recreationally, with his last actual rated round being March of 2017, which is a bit jarring because if you look at the PDGA page, he has stuff in 2018, but essentially it was just DNFs at USDGC. And even though I'm sure you probably already know this, but I bet you have thrown a disc by Ken Climo because there are so many Innova discs with the Ken Climo stamp because he's got AVRs, T-Birds, Rocks, Firebirds, Wraiths, Eagles. Literally every single disc that you would start with as a disc golfer with Innova is basically a Ken Climo disc. And so after that tenure of so much time at Innova, over the entire career, he has amounted to earning $438,000, at least in PDGA earnings. But if you know anything about Innova, they tend to be a bit stingy, especially for somebody that doesn't even really play. So it definitely does not seem like a huge surprise here. And so along came Discraft and most likely Paul McBeth that gave him a very much sweetheart deal that while we definitely don't have specifics for, it is at least $200,000 a year with Discraft. And so you may be wondering, well, what the heck is somebody that doesn't even really play disc golf going to do with $200,000 for a disc golf contract? Basically, I don't know. I really don't know what the play is here.
But it's odd to me because I don't understand how another company plans on leveraging this.
What makes sense? Why?
Everyone in the disc golf community is also very much confused by this. But if there was any guesses, it is most likely Paul McBeth really wanting a collab with Ken Climo. And instead of like the 4-claw or 6-claw that McBeth loves to rep, maybe we're going to get an 18 or a 12. Who knows? The world is your oyster.
Philanthropy wise, he's the GOAT. He's doing things that I never could have done. I just didn't have the monetary, access to do the things he's doing, the foundation and the new course, all that stuff, the new courses he's putting in all over the world. I think that's great. My hat's off to him. I wish I could have done things like that. I wish I would have been able to be that person.
But one thing is like 99% sure, we are definitely getting a Ken Climo buzz, because if you are anybody notable, you are almost always getting a signature series buzz. And especially with Ken Climo repping the rock basically on every shot he could on the early days of disc golf, there is no doubt that if he can play, he will definitely be throwing that buzz. But you also might be wondering, well, what the heck is going on here? Because the disc golf community is pretty stingy right now. There's not a lot of money to go around. And even though though Discraft is definitely the company that probably has the most flexible budget right now, they still are probably a little tight on budget. So realistically, I think they must have something up their sleeve that must be some kind of collab between Paul and him that's like some entirely new series of discs, repping the only 2 MPO players with over 5 world wins. Or maybe this is simply just an act of kindness from Paul to Ken, because as far as I can tell, he's not really playing disc golf. He is basically working a normal job. I think it's construction. And in a post about 2 years ago, it was stated that he really doesn't have the physical capabilities to play much disc golf nowadays. And because of that, I'm wondering if there is some form of like a media collaboration that would make this viable. I don't really know. Everything right now is kind of conjecture until January 1st, because that is when we get the full true announcement of what's going on here.
More or less symbolic, we are taking over as the preeminent disc company, and Innova's no longer it. Obviously, people have liked his commentary. Maybe we'll see him do more of that now. Maybe there's ROI. I'm not convinced it's going to work from like a dollars and cents perspective, but from a symbolism perspective, big time power move.
But one thing is for sure, he hopped out of Innova as soon as he possibly could, because I'm sure he was not getting anywhere close to 200,000. And another thing that's not entirely clear, but does seem to be at least somewhat true, is that he sold off the rights to the Ken Climo merchandise. So all the discs that have Ken Climo on them, I do not believe he has full rights to those sales. So it's definitely hurting his income as well. But I'm assuming it happened a long time ago when he did not expect any kind of money to flow from it. But as for this champion that has 12 world titles, a 50+% win rate, and over 26 years of disc golf experience, there still is not much known besides the fact that it is valued at over 200,000 per year for this contract. And the one stipulation I have is that it says valued. It doesn't say offering more than 200,000, it says valued. And if there's anything I know from these disc golf companies, they can say valued, and it can mean a lot of different things. There could be merchandise that he gets a cut of, and if he sells all of that, it could amount to 200,000. There's almost definitely not a performance bonus, with the fact that he had a hip injury, and of course being 56, you do what you can. So despite this being pretty big news, there's really not that much to say about it. We don't have that much information. We obviously can't expect him to play a lot, so it's probably likely that he's going to do some kind of media operations for Discraft. But as a whole, everyone is pretty hyped for Ken to get his bag. It has been so many years of him not making a lot of money, despite being one of the biggest names in disc golf history. So it feels like he's finally getting what he deserves. And so while I'm sure a Ken Climo buzz is probably going to sell decently, I don't think Discraft is trying to make a whole lot of money here. And so ultimately, I think while all the people don't really understand this deal, I think it's not really about the money. I think it's ultimately just about helping a player out that has done so much for the sport. So in conclusion, this is probably one of those signings that doesn't relate to anything else. It is purely a one-time deal and probably doesn't affect Ezra, Isaac, whoever is signing with Discraft, probably doesn't affect them. But whatever the future does entail for him, I'm excited to see how it all pans out, because it is crazy. This is a time in disc golf where we are not seeing a whole lot of money float around. So the fact that he's finally getting his money, probably can get some form of retirement, is probably really hype for him. But ultimately, we'll get a lot more details in January. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Do you think anybody else will sign in the next month? Probably not. This is still very early in the off season, so we'll see. But thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Wild Runs, signing out. Peace.
You couldn't find a disc. There was nobody selling discs. The stores didn't have them. There was just nowhere to get a disc. So that was the biggest problem back in the day. There was one guy that would come out to the course and he would open his trunk and he would have a box of discs in there. And if you weren't standing at his trunk when he opened it, you didn't get a disc because they were gone immediately.